When you're 2-4-1, it's nice to hear some applause occasionally. Haven't heard that for a while.
At least not around that. Yeah, exactly. Right. Around the Sounders. Well, so again, for the people that haven't been to a Start Grind event, we there really is just a conversation between two people. It's an interview style. We'll open up to Q&A. 45 minutes or so from now. So hold your questions till then, but you'll definitely have time for questions. And I got a surprise for you, the people who are asking questions. So feel free to bring those up. And Adrian, thanks for being here.
Happy to do it.
Yeah,
appreciate it. It's a half block from my office.
Yeah, nice little walk.
I'll be here anytime.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. So tell me just, you've been, the Sounders have been extremely successful on from a economic standpoint where, the attendance is tops. I think you're probably the top valued if you look at just value of a franchise right as well. So does that surprise you? Like if somebody would have said that 6 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, look, we there's a reason we bought the franchise. There's a reason I got involved in soccer back in 2001. I initially got involved in the minor league team in Seattle, bought the franchise, operated it, but very early on believed that MLS would be sort of a paradigm shift for our market in soccer. And possibly for the league overall. I knew that this market was going to be good. My partners knew this market was great. The level of our success, the scale, the fact that we've really, every measurable, really every key performance indicator that we measure. Other than MLS championships, we feel pretty good about, and again we can get more into it a little deeper, but I'd love to say that was all because of brilliant ownership and management, but being realistic, anybody who's started a business knows that you need a little bit of luck and a little bit of timing and the wind blow in the right direction, and we had a lot of that.
Yeah, and when you got involved, Adrian, when you said, "Hey, I'm gonna get involved at a pretty high level," what was the reason behind it? What was the reason for you, not for Joe or the Drew or all the other guys? What was your reason for doing it?
Yeah, I would say that it was multifaceted, but I mean it all centered around community. And dating all the way back to the days of the original NASL Sounders. I went to those games as a kid, starting in 1974. Never missed a game, and it was a family. It was a family event for us, and that left an indelible mark on me. Sure. It just became sort of part of me, and. I went to camps, I went to the parties after the games, I got the autographs, those players were my heroes. I was a big soccer player until I was 16, 17, went on to school and do other businesses and eventually came back to it. But so it, there was that draw once I sort of reconnected with the Sounders as an adult, and I also and I guess along with that I saw as a kid what an impact the Sounders made on me and what I could maybe participate in for this generation, and couple that with being, pretty attuned to the changing demographic in the country and the, feeling like the time was right for soccer, knowing the market conditions in Seattle itself, knowing the group that I was investing with and the quality there, the partnership with the Seahawks originally, there were there were a bunch of things sort of screaming out that this would be successful. But really at its core for me was community and the love of the game,
Yeah.
and trying to make a massive impact in the Puget Sound and nationally, if possible, in the soccer world.
Sure. And when you were, playing soccer as a kid and, goofing around with that, was there ever a time you're like, I'd like to own a soccer team someday?
No, no.
It never happened.
I wanted to be a professional player for a while, but then all the other kids grew faster and stronger, and I got knocked on my ass a bunch and decided I better go to school and
be smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you come from a pretty entrepreneurial family. I mean, your brother, your dad. I mean, everybody in your family is entrepreneurial. Why is that? Where did that start? Was that your dad, or was your dad's dad, or?
Yeah, I mean, I imagine. I mean, for me, it was my dad.
Sure.
I imagine for him, it was his dad. But we grew up. My family's sort of big sort of family business that I grew up in is something called Pacific Coast Feather Company, manufacture pillows and comforters. It's been in Seattle since 1924.
Forever. Yeah. It's not a little. It's about a $300 million company.
Yeah.
But
well, okay. It's not quite that big anymore. That's a tough business. Nobody go into the pillow business.
Yeah.
But really, I guess what happened were sort of values that were taught, and we were lucky enough, although it didn't seem that way when we were 13-year-old kids, but to be able to go down to the factory and push boxes and clean out drainage pipes and tear feathers out of burlap bags and climb through the most dangerous equipment you've ever seen to clean it. But and my dad purposefully gave us the shit jobs to teach us the value of hard work. There's one story I like to tell, which I didn't learn about until I was an adult. But when I was about 10 years old, my dad bought like 3 tons of chopped up polyester ski jackets. And at the time, we used polyester in pillows. He threw me in the garage and said, tear the nylon from the filling, the Dacron in the middle. I'll pay you 10 cents a pound.
Wow.
Took me all summer to do this. Got my, I don't know, $103 or something. And as an adult, he told me that they threw all of it away. Never used any of it. And it was all just to keep me busy for a summer and keep me focused on an activity. Tenacity. And that is, I'm.
Did you just hit him when you said it? When he told you that, it's like, holy crap, Dad!
I was old enough to appreciate it, but might have been pretty pissed if it had been a few years earlier.
Yeah.
But then beyond the just hard work was values of treating the people that we work with. Again, another story from the family business is there were a lot of lean years.
Sure.
And the conversations around the dinner table were always that the expedient and the profitable thing to do would have been to lay off people.
Sure.
And my dad fought that tooth and nail, even if it meant compromising for our family. Tried like crazy not to let people go if there was a way to avoid it.
Sure.
And usually it paid off, and obviously we've made difficult decisions over the years. Everybody does, but I think that value in terms of how you treat people, building teams, building great products, doing right by your customers, and sort of focusing on letting the results be the byproduct of all the good stuff. So
yeah. And so when you got the sound, when you went into the partnership with the Sounders, it was obviously you're working with the Seahawks with Paul Allen's group. Tell us, what's the difference? What are the differences between then and now? I mean, obviously it was 2014. I think you split with those guys. Yeah, so 2014. So what's been the kind of the big difference for you personally, and then I'll talk more about the company.
Yeah, so maybe to catch people up a little bit, when we launched the Sounders, it was in partnership with the Seahawks. Paul Allen still owns 25% of the team, and part of the agreement was that the business management group of the Seahawks would run the Sounders MLS team from day one, which was fantastic for us because it allowed us to focus on the soccer team and the brand and our fans, and less on how we build the infrastructure to sell tickets and sell sponsorships and sell merchandise and operate the stadium and a lot of the the really difficult pieces to running a sports franchise. But that was an agreement that was planned to be there was going to be some sort of sunset to that, and we would eventually, kick the training wheels off and go run our own business group. And we did that. Yeah, it was April of 2014. We leased some office space down here in Pioneer Square. We brought some of the business group across from the Seahawks group, but went out and hired. I think we came over with about 30. We've hired 40 more, so 70, 75 people in the offices here. For me, then personally, I decide up until that point, I had, for whatever reason, I sort of seemed to be, back when we launched the team, we needed someone to focus on the soccer side and be the general manager, and my partners all looked at me and said, you're the guy. You're the only guy, so you're the only guy living in Seattle who has the time, who has some expertise, who has been in soccer.
Sure.
So I was the general manager and ran the sporting side up until the end of 2014, and then hired my replacement and have sort of taken on the role of CEO, where I'm managing the business side, keeping my finger on the pulse of the soccer operations as well. And so for me personally, it's sort of given me a new view on the overall business, and now 90% of my energy is on how we continue to grow our business, and it's we've kind of passed that startup phase, where everything's like it just feels it's definitely work now, like it. Those startups it's so much fun. The first 3 years, 4 years, everything's growing and going crazy, and
you're learning stuff all the time.
Exactly, and at a certain point, it's like, oh wow, this is really hard work.
Yeah.
So
now we're actually working every day. Yeah. And in doing that, Adrian, the work part, right? The work part. What part that you would just as soon leave at home, not do? Like if you could just say, like let's just say I was in your office and I was working for you, and I'd say, hey, what do you want me to do? And you're like, do this, because I hate it. I'm bad at it. Just do this.
Yeah.
What would this be?
The bar is pretty high because it's a pretty good business. So look, their soccer on a global level can be a pretty dirty business, and getting the truth out of agents as you deal with players and the rumors that are started and people denying that they've started those. That piece of it is a little dirty and not so much fun.
Yeah.
I guess here's the other one is that. And I'm not sure you can get rid of it, but most people in normal jobs, it's not very public.
Yeah.
Like when you screw up in
no one
our
knows.
business, it's on the front of the sports page, and it kind of sucks. When the team is really struggling, like literally, when my girlfriend says, "Hey, let's go to dinner tonight," I think, I'm not sure I really want to go out and run into people. So that that part is tough. And I came from traditional businesses where it wasn't public. The other piece of that is in a traditional business, the other businesses I'm involved in. When you do things right on a day-to-day basis, week to week, month to month, usually your report card, your P&L kind of reflects that. It's like, oh yeah, we did a lot of good work, and for us, our P&L really is the results on Saturday, and you can do everything right for week after week after week, and the ball,
misses
1 millimeter to the right, and it's a goal. 1 meter to the left, it bounces out off the post, and everyone thinks you're an idiot.
Yeah.
So, so that's also difficult and frustrating.
Yeah, especially because, like you say, you're used to running a normal business where you are financially like, oh, okay, we did pretty good this month or this quarter or whatever, right? So, in your, in the the building of the business, part of this, the model that you chose is having the vote of the fans, which is modeled after, is that Barcelona or somebody?
Lots of teams all over the world
do it. So one, why did you do that? And then two, would you do the same thing if you had to do it over?
We did it. We
and
did
maybe,
it.
Wait, maybe you should explain. Does everyone know how that does that? You might want to explain that.
Okay, so many soccer teams around the world are organized almost like membership clubs, like the Washington Athletic Club. You're a member of a sporting club. You pay your dues, and that entitles you to a vote on. I mean, in most soccer clubs, it's a vote on the senior executive of the club. It's more complicated than that, but basically, you're a stakeholder in your club, and we wanted to model after that, and it was really driven, if I'm honest, by Drew Carey, who's one of my partners, who had been to Barcelona and Real Madrid and loved that system. And so we created, our mantra, I guess, is democracy in sports. We wanted our fans to feel like more than just ATMs that we hit up once a year for their season ticket money. We wanted them to feel like stakeholders and be involved, be a voice for us to know whether we're doing well or not. So the main piece of that for us became the vote on the general manager, the lead sporting executive with the Sounders. And every 4 years, our fans, our season ticket holders, get to vote on whether the general manager retains his or her job or loses it. It's a vote of confidence or no confidence. We've been through the process once. I believe it was after the 2012 season. I was the general manager at the time. Thankfully, we had a good season in 2012 and got a vote of confidence.
Sure. And how do you feel? How did you feel about that? Is it? I mean, it's still a little nerve-wracking, isn't it?
It was. It was a little nerve-wracking, especially when my brother told me he didn't think I'd get reelected. Again, kind of a public thing. Like, sort of popular. Do you like me? Do you not like me? So, and related to that, this whole democracy thing, we've created various fan councils, advisory boards that meet with ownership on a quarterly basis, if not more often, and we try to divulge as much as possible to those fan groups to try to make sure we're still heading the right direction.
Yep.
And sometimes you don't sometimes we hear things that we don't necessarily like or want to hear, and sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree, but having that fan feedback on a regular basis, customer feedback has been tremendous for us.
Yeah, it's true for any company, right? I mean, but sports, a lot of franchises just don't do that.
It is. I mean, it's pretty traditional business where, super rich owners who, quite frankly, could give it, it's changing, but could give a shit. Like their building is full. You don't want the 15% price increase?
Don't come.
Don't come. Well, somebody else is in line to buy the tickets.
Yeah.
And we've tried to run it as close to a business that, could maybe be, compared to a publicly held company or something where.
Yeah. And what does it work like? What's working with Drew Carey and Joe Roth? I mean, those guys are obviously L.A. Hollywood kind of type guys. What what is that? What the hell is that? I mean,
yeah. Well, they're very different.
Sure, I would assume that. I don't know either one of them, but I would assume they're very different. Yeah.
Yeah. They have strong opinions, especially Joe. Joe, Hollywood movie producer, big movies, Alice in Wonderland, Snow White and the Huntsman.
He's used to getting his way.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, we've butted heads, and but generally it's gone really well. He's in L.A. He wants his opinion heard, and makes that very clear. But he also knows we're up here busting our butts trying to do the right thing, and again, we haven't won an MLS championship, but we've had pretty good success. And I mean, he's been involved along the way. He comes to probably half the games up here, maybe more. We talk, if not, every day, if not a couple times a day.
Wow.
Always wants to know what's going on with the team. And Drew is, way low key, totally passionate, into it. Loves it, doing a lot of work in LA now, so he hasn't been up to as many games. Owner of the people, or for the people.
He's the voice of the people. Yeah.
He is, and he'll wander into a bar and drop down a credit card and say, beers for everyone, and super generous.
Do you get that bill?
What's that?
Do you get that?
No, he pays it.
Okay.
He pays it. Maybe takes it out of the Price is Right money. No, he's been fantastic as well, and good for our profile nationally. Now there are other teams that are starting to get some of those celebrities involved. There's a new team in LA, LAFC, that Will Ferrell is one of the owners. Mia Hamm, Tony Robbins, among huge crew of cast of characters, but they all help raise the profile of the game and the team.
Yeah, which is great. It's great for everybody, right? So, in the process of running the company today, where is it going? Where do you see some kind of big things happening, big changes? Maybe not talk so much detail about the tech at this point, because we'll go into that a little later. But where do you see some changes happening? And because most of us in this audience are from the startup world, software disruption, those kind of things. What things do you see kind of happening in your business? What's interesting for you that you're kind of either watching out for or even planning for?
Yeah, it's hard to answer that question without talking about technology, but again, generally speaking, I'll go back to kind of the demographics. Our fan base is young, well-educated, urban, very connected to tech. Now, again, our fan base is broader than that, but a big core audience is that group, and it's it's in those downtown cores where we're building our stadiums that are successful
Sure.
in the league today. But aside from that, obviously broadcast is in a massive sort of transition phase. A lot of the digital companies kind of kicking the tires on rights. Whether that's an Amazon or a Google or Microsoft, Yahoo obviously tested
Sure.
a deal with the NFL. So I think that is going to be something to follow over the next 10 years or so.
And Adrian, on that point, how much influence can an Xbox or how much can they influence anything within your organization? Yahoo or if they get deeply involved, can they really influence anything, or is it still going to be owners running the show?
Well, I think it's going to be owners running the show. Now, when I talk about this broadcast, it's just for the rights fees. These guys are going to come in, whether it's an Amazon or
Whoever.
or Google or Apple, and buy the NHL or something, and the rights to broadcast all
Sure.
the live programming. Probably build a channel around it of shoulder content.
Yeah.
So I guess the answer to your question is it depends how big the check is.
Sure. That was what I'm getting to. Is like, can they have?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we would, with our broadcast partner, we will co-create content, for instance. And again, it's just for us, it's really it's a financial deal and it's a distribution deal. How do we get in front of more eyeballs with quality content,
Sure.
and extend the brand and create fans? So, some of that is money. Some of it is the profile of the partner. For instance, again, sort of back to traditional media. Our broadcasts are on Q13, Joe
Sure.
TV,
Yep.
over the air, wide distribution. We've had some choices along the way to maybe get paid a little bit more money, but less access and distribution for our fans.
Sure.
And we've chosen the path of
More
more distribution. But there is some amount of money that would convince us to
Change.
course.
Yeah. So in the long run, potentially there is that it potentially could happen down the road, but it's probably a ways down the road.
Yeah, could
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
Again, sort of sticking with just a few other changes that at least I see. I think virtual reality is going to be huge in sports. I don't know exactly what
Where?
form, but whether it's coaching, playing more sort of soccer uses on the technical side to analyze play and movements and the field of play, or fan experience. Clearly that's going to be a big opportunity. We talk about whether can you create a 2 or 3 minute virtual reality video about the experience of a Seattle Sounders game, go show that around the city to people who haven't been to a game and ask for their credit card.
Exactly. Be in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about that, because that is really interesting, because it I think it's going to affect a lot of actually sports, not just soccer. It's not the only one, but NBA, NFL, all that stuff. How is that going to? I mean, in your head, how is that going to work? I mean, what is your theory on it? None of us know, but what's your theory on how virtual reality, or just engaging the fans to the players, during the games even? How do you see some of those things happening for us?
Yeah, I wish I knew.
Yeah.
I'd start the company.
Totally. I would help.
Yeah, but look, I think it's going to be a slow build.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's
Yep.
still financial pressures and challenges to being involved in a virtual reality experience. I think it will. My guess is it'll probably start more on the coach on the team side. People who where we are willing to invest $500,000 in a system that will help us, as opposed to 60,000 fans at home with HoloLens sets watching from their homes. I think it'll slowly build, but in 10 years, I don't doubt that everyone in every home will have a virtual reality headset, and you'll be watching, whether it's live sports, highlights of sports,
you'll
choosing
be
where
right
you
on the
where you
field.
sit in the stadium, being able to be at away games from your couch. Obviously, being able to shop for merchandise, tickets, systems for us allowing our sponsors to envision what being a sponsor of the team means, and the touch points that sponsor has with our fans. So again, I'm just not smart enough to pick the one that's going to be first.
Yeah, and are you guys more likely to invest in something that is, say, helps with the team, helps the team more data points, right? It gives the team, meaning the coaches and the owners, more data points, as well as helping the audience, fans, somehow engage? Is that kind of that would be like the thing that you would want to see?
Yeah, if my gut tells me that I will be more interested in fan engagement technology as opposed to team side stuff.
Like data analysis and gathering more data, and
Yeah, and we, on the team side right now, we invest really heavily in sports science, in data collection, and crunching the data.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that there's big opportunity and there's risk of not continuing to, there are a lot of entertainment opportunities for fans. First, we have to make sure that the stadium experience is fantastic, because that's a challenge in and of itself in pro sports leagues, that people are leaving the stadium for their sofa.
Sure.
Because now they've got 120-inch TVs with multiple angles and a second screen right there, and the bathroom right there, and pause on the direct TV. So so we need to keep figuring out how we either enhance that experience and find ways to monetize the experience at home, or make sure that the fan experience at the stadium is
so good that they can't miss it.
Yeah.
And have you seen anything like in the last year, 6 months, that said this is really interesting? It's maybe a little early, but
yeah, I've seen some stuff that is way early on the. I've seen probably more on the team side than the fan engagement side. I've seen some sales tools for if you're going to buy a suite, for instance, for a bunch of years, put on a headset and take a tour of the suite, video. Pretty cool stuff. But again, I'm not sure. I think we're a few years away from prime time.
Yeah.
But it's coming.
And what is there any interesting technology for like the players? Because like there's the local company here that does mouth guards. That there's lots of interesting kind of sports tech stuff. Is there anything kind of soccer or just stuff that you've seen that again is interesting and or you're using?
Yeah, we, I don't know, people who've heard me talk before probably ad nauseum have heard me, speak about our sports science. See some head nodding. We, on the team side, we use a lot of systems. I would say they're all based around a couple of pretty basic and old technology at this point. One is a heart rate monitor that every player wears during every training session, and the other is a GPS unit that every player wears. And from that, though, we're able to track acceleration, deceleration, distance traveled, speed at which the players are traveling. Heart rate then is synchronized with that.
Sure.
So we know, and then the drills that we're doing during those training sessions. So we know, during a 5v5 small-sided game that, Dempsey's heart rate got to 97% of his max heart rate in the early stage of this, exercise where he hadn't run it at speed for okay, what's going on with his fitness. We, along with all of that, we do a ton of, there's another system called Omega Wave that measures CNS, central nervous system functioning, helps us understand whether guys are getting enough sleep, nutrition.
Wow.
So we have like 8 systems. We have sleep monitoring, and we throw it all into a giant database. And former Microsoft data scientist who helps us create algorithms that spit out hopefully pretty graphs that the coaches can use.
And something useful.
Yeah, and all of that is really based really for 3 main purposes. One, to monitor risk of injury so that we can avoid soft tissue injuries, muscle injuries. 2, to get guys perfectly tuned for Saturday game time, so that the loading is just right, so that they've got the right energy and stamina for the game. And then third is for injury recovery, how we get players back from being injured as quickly as possible. So on the sports side, I mean, there is tons of cool stuff. Where it merges with fan engagement, there's some talk. Our league wouldn't allow this currently, but there's some really tiny cameras, and you could potentially, embed cameras in a player so that, not literally in a player, but on a player's clothing, so that you could get that, that view as
Sure.
As the player is competing.
Anything with the shoes?
Well, Adidas has a system that throws a GPS unit in the shoe.
Sure.
We've chosen to use there's an Australian company called Catapult that puts it in But other than the wheels and the flashing lights, I'm trying to think. Nothing comes to mind.
Okay. So talk to us about, it's still a business. You still have to manage people. They're humans. They do things unpredictable sometimes. So
love social media, by the way, because they never do post anything on social media that we all regret.
Exactly. What in your last few years? What has been kind of a big learning for you? Just being CEO and running a company that's 70 people that as you said, is a public entity for the most part. It's in the newspaper daily. What have you learned? What's been a thing that you've learned?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, look, from day one, I would say that I think in a good way, I learned that running a professional sports franchise is not too dissimilar from the businesses that we all are in, we're in. To your point, having a really good plan, having really good goals and achievable goals, surrounding yourself with great people who are passionate about what they do and are respectful. One of the things, again, from my family's business, we always wanted to work around people that were nice to each other and respectful of each other, and life is short, and to work around dirtbags and people that bring you down just wasn't,
it's not worth it.
At least wasn't going to fly in my world.
What's been hard for you? What's been hard for you?
The hardest thing for me is the public piece of it, and staying away from the message boards.
Sure.
Not
reading the paper.
Yeah, not reading the paper. Although the paper is much better than the message boards. If you're ever in a business that has message boards, stay away, because everyone in management is an idiot. No, but look, it's a double-edged sword because it's the hardest, but there's a kernel of truth in, well, not everything, but
most things,
in a lot of things, and again, though, the most. Again, it sounds like I'm whining, but just this whole idea, people will go on message boards and post things as fact, because they know it's a fact, when in fact it's not a fact. It's nowhere near true. And then 10 people will go about their day based on that fact that someone, and it's a different world, right? I mean,
so that's the frustrating part. That is, like you say, it's not true. You can't erase it. You can't tell people not to read it. All those things. So it is what it is, right?
Yeah, and again, just I guess we have 36,000 season ticket holders, and we want to make everyone happy. But again, I guess that's something I've learned. Turns out it's kind of impossible to make everybody happy all the time, and so the result of that is that we as a management team and the owners have to really believe in each other and what we're doing, and know that our hearts are in the right place, and our hopefully our brains are in the right place as well, and that we've got the wherewithal and the vision to sort of see where we're headed, and know that sometimes we're going to have to make unpopular decisions to get there.
Yeah, exactly. And so if I'd asked you 5 years ago that you were going to have 36,000 season ticket holders, would you have just laughed at me?
Well, 5 years ago we had 28,000, so no, I wouldn't have laughed at you at that point. 9 years ago, if you had asked me, I would have laughed at you.
Yeah.
Well, and we look, when we planned our business, we did several pro formas, and one of them had 9,000 season ticket holders, one was 12,000, and one was 15,000. That was, and we had scaled the building for a capacity of about 25,000. That was going to be the maximum capacity, and quickly we realized that we had underestimated, and those numbers would have been, in those days in Major League Soccer, would have been decent numbers. So I mean, obviously you blew that out of the water. So, but again, let me just to be clear, we made some very good decisions, but but the Sonics were on their way out of town.
Sure. Which
The
helps.
Seahawks and Mariners had sucked for years. We had this unbelievable management team that we launched with. We had pent-up demand for Major League Soccer in this market that we knew about, but we didn't. We couldn't imagine how how strong that was. Again, we put a good team together. We came out of the gates winning. We hired signed some pretty big name players. We just, everything seemed to fire on all cylinders. We just, and we got lucky.
There's
and
a little
had
luck
good
in there.
timing.
Yeah, there's a little luck in there, but timing and recognizing that it's good time was also something you can pat yourself back a little bit. No, not much, just a little bit. So the Sounders are worth around $250 million ish, right? Give or take. Who do you think surprises the most?
By the way, if anyone wants them for $250, I'm a seller.
Seller. Yeah, exactly. So who do you think that it surprised the most? You, your brother, or Paul Allen?
My brother, who thought that it was the
stupidest thing.
single idea he'd ever heard in his life to buy an MLS team.
That's great.
And made sure I knew that often. Until we launched and we had 22,000 season ticket holders in the first 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Then he said that it was a great idea and it was his all along. Anybody who knows my brother will appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of your brother, if I asked your brother right now what you're good at, what would he tell me?
Nothing, probably.
Nothing at all.
Spending money. No, I think he would. I would call my brother, both my brother and I, jack of all trades, master of none.
Sure.
I think we're both. I mean, he's gained a lot of expertise in some areas, and I guess I have as well. But I think we're both. We grew up pretty well rounded and know enough about enough things to kind of be dangerous and also be effective at the same time.
Yeah, stay out of hot water and
and again, I think that's made. I mean, it's made me effective with the Sounders. Is I know enough about every area of our business to kind of call bullshit or
Sure.
see whether it passes the sniff test.
Yep.
Now, that said, we're hiring and interviewing senior developers next week, and I was asked to interview them.
You're like, what?
I'm like, okay, I can tell you if he's nice or not, but that's about it. So
I'm no good after that. Give me 5 minutes. Yeah. So, guys, you get some questions ready if you're up for it. I'll get some questions here in just a couple minutes. Now, do you have a mentor you work with, or mentors? You have people you bounce ideas off?
Yeah, I have several. I would say that the gentleman who's the closest to a mentor I have is Todd Lewicki, who was the CEO of the Seahawks Sounders. He's now the Chief Operating Officer of the NFL. In my mind, one of the great sports executives ever in this country. Has hit it out of the park on multiple occasions with multiple franchises, is one of the best people managers I've ever seen. I visited him after he left the Seahawks. He became the CEO and partner in the Tampa Bay Lightning NHL franchise. And 3 weeks after he got there, I went and visited for a game. We walked around the arena. He probably knew half of the ushers' names, by heart. Knew their families, knew his way around the arena. I was embarrassed when I came home. People just they'll run through walls for Todd, and he's just such a good person. The the other thing that I learned from Todd is, again, we run into a lot of difficult situations in our franchise, in everybody's business. He was the one who immediately raised his hand and said, I'm on it. Like, we have to make this difficult call and tell these people who bought 10,000 tickets that we don't have any tickets for them. I'm on it. I'm calling them right now. Always wanted the nastiest, worst things, because he didn't want the people that worked for him to necessarily have to take it on. And so, kind of that old adage, you want to be, you never want to make someone do something that you wouldn't do yourself. So he's been fantastic, and more on maybe the personal level and kind of thinking through my life and what I do with it. Certainly my brother and before he passed away, my dad. So,
and what about others you mentee for others? I mean, are you mentoring any other people? Is there any?
That's none that I know of. I mean, I don't have a weekly meeting with someone where I hope that maybe some of what I do is worthy of being, duplicated or repeated, or, but I don't, I don't have a.
You don't have like once a month you meet with X or her or him or whatever.
No, I think the people in our office are probably like, okay, now you've been in my office too many times this week. Just go away.
Go away. Exactly. Any questions, guys? Buzz all the way back there. What about the salary cap schema?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the I think it's one of the things, quite frankly, that's led Major League Soccer to be as successful as it has the last 20 years. We have not a super complicated salary cap, but in whatever round numbers, we spend, call it $5 million a year on our 20 players. So an average of $250,000 per player, but we're allowed to have 3 players that basically we can pay anything we want. So a Clint Dempsey, who I think, again, you can look this up, is on something like $5 million a year. So there are 3 players. It allows for our league is very focused on parity. We want every team's fans to believe in the beginning of the year that they can win a championship, because we think that that's a better model than, take this year's miracle of Leicester City out of the English Premiership. But typically there are 4 or 5 teams in the beginning of any year in England that can win a championship. In Spain, there are 3 teams. In Germany, there's 1, but you could probably say there are 2. Every other team is basically playing to avoid, if people are familiar with soccer, avoid relegation, which in the rest of the world, if you finish at the bottom of the league, you go to the next league down. So imagine the Mariners finishing in last place and going to AAA the next year. And that's the impact is that great financially too. I'm rambling, but in the English Premier League, every team is guaranteed. I think this year, I think next year, they're guaranteed $160 million in TV money. Every single team.
Wow.
If you are relegated to the next league down, it's about $20 million.
Yeah.
So
significant.
Yeah. Did that? Yeah. I mean. Yeah, no, it's very true. Scouting, coaching, technology, sports science, facilities, and culture. How you treat people and building cohesiveness and a great organization.
All the way in the back.
Yeah, yeah. For me, soccer was always a passion of mine. And again, I didn't necessarily know I was going to own a soccer franchise. But, he's referring to, I have a chain of picture framing stores, but
Yep.
picture framing was never a passion of mine.
Sure.
Business was,
Yeah,
and
and
so I
is,
got,
yeah.
got out of, I got that satisfaction out of that business. Um, but the soccer thing, it's, I mean, look, it's a dream job, dream business. There's a reason why a bunch of billionaires want to own sports franchises. It's fun. It's fun, and I guess it's sort of the ultimate billionaire toy. Owning you can be a millionaire and own an MLS franchise, but NBA, NHL, major NBA, NHL, NFL, and
MLB.
major anyway. Yeah, the other four, it's a billion dollar business. So, look, I can whine a little bit. Everybody has their own issues, right? But I'm really flipping lucky in what I'm doing. It's a blast.
Right here.
And by team, you mean the business
Yeah,
team or the?
Business team. Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the players.
So again, when we moved from the Seahawks facility, we brought maybe 30 people over, but more junior level people, and then we really went out and recruited director level, VP level people to take on some of the management roles. Some people were promoted, but our vice president of marketing comes from DC United in our league. I'm blanking, but we went around and either recruited people out of sports or industries that we thought would cross over well. And we're lucky enough, first being in sports, I'm sure in certain technology worlds, people want to be in tech as well.
Sure.
Everybody wants to, I'm exaggerating. A lot of people want to be in sports.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I could have people pay us to work for the sports franchise, but it's a really coveted job, and especially with the Sounders that have been so successful and have sort of rewritten the modestly speaking, sort of rewritten the rules on what a soccer business can be in this country. Does that answer the question? No, there were four owners, and the way that really went down is I got a call one day from the commissioner of Major League Soccer. It said, "Hey, you should meet this Joe Roth guy, who's a Hollywood movie producer, and he wants to own an MLS team." So I Googled Joe Roth and had no idea who he was.
Sure.
And again, as as sort of an inside story as to how crazy these things work. I met him. We spent an hour talking about poker because we were both poker players, and hit it off. Didn't even talk about soccer. And the next day the commissioner called. He's like, "Hey, sounds like you guys would be perfect partners. You both like poker." Drew Carey then found out that Joe Roth was gonna buy a franchise and called him and said,
I want in.
I want in. Funny story along with that is they had a meeting set up for a bar near the Price is Right studio, and Drew, spinning the wheel, broke his hand just before the meeting, and was needed to go to the hospital to get his hand fixed, and said, no, I've got to go to this meeting at the bar, meet Joe first, because I've got to try and get in this soccer thing. And went to the meeting, and they ended up doing a deal, and then Drew went off to the hospital. And then Paul Allen was kind of the final piece, and quite frankly, his was more of a trade for equity deal. So basically providing the management team, providing the stadium in exchange for equity.
That's not a bad deal.
No, it turned out it was great.
It's good for you guys too.
Yeah, it was great for both sides.
Both parties. Yeah. Right here in front.
First, I'm a big fan of what you have done here. It's amazing to me that to see a soccer team become what it has become in the United States. It's amazing. I mean, I've been a soccer fan my whole life.
Where are you from?
I'm from Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your team in Mexico?
America.
Yeah. No. Were you at the game?
I couldn't watch it.
Okay.
I watched it later, yeah. But, you know. But the question that I have is, have you guys thought about investing more on the academies, on the lower level? I'm talking about 7, 10-year-olds. Everybody talks about Barcelona, of course, doing that, but even in other leagues, Argentina with smaller teams, and in Mexico with different teams, and everywhere. Yep. Have you guys looked into that?
Yeah. So we and it's a work in progress. But about 5 years ago, started with our academy. So we go down to right now. We go down to under 12s. So 10 and 11-year-olds. We also have partnerships with youth clubs in the area to identify players to bring them into that net. It's interesting because the Hispanic players sometimes are not in the organized soccer, so that's kind of an area where we have challenges, and often they're the skillful players whose families have come from Central America, South America, Mexico, and it's an area where we need to do better. But that said, we have under 12 Sounders, under 12 academy team, under 14, under 15, under 16, under 18. And then we have the shirt you're wearing, S2, which is our reserve team, our second team, which plays in the 3rd division of U.S. soccer. So again, the idea is that we can identify a 9 or a 10-year-old and bring them through the system. Again, the challenge with that is that at 9, 10, 11, 13, 14 years old, it's really kind of a numbers game. You can identify maybe the best 9-year-old, but that player may not be the best player 4 years
14,
from now.
yeah.
And a good example of that is a young man who we signed this year named Jordan Morris. Jordan was a fantastic athlete and a good soccer player until he was 16, but at 16 or 17 he turned into a man among boys, and became top goal scorer in the Academy League at under 18. Got recruited to Stanford. Many of you, I'm sure, know this story, but went to Stanford for 3 years, led their team to a national championship, became the first player in 25 years as a college player to play for the U.S. national team, scored a goal against Mexico, and then thankfully signed a contract with us in February, and is going to be a really, really good player.
Yeah. Two more questions. Overall on the left with your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a super complicated question that has, lots of layers to it. One thing that we as a league need to take some responsibility for is that we play. Sometimes we play during FIFA windows, and again, this is for the non-soccer people. This is like Greek. There are FIFA is the world governing body of soccer. They determine certain windows during the year when players are pulled from their clubs to go play for their national teams for tournaments. And it's this continual battle because the clubs don't want to give up their players. Sometimes they come back injured from playing for their national teams, which is really, really frustrating. And in our case, in our league, sometimes our players are gone and we actually play league games, and so teams are at a disadvantage. Although in a league with parity, theoretically, teams should be disadvantaged on a somewhat similar basis. But if I'm honest about last season, I certainly national team call-ups was a problem, but we also got hit with a lot of injuries, and those injuries in 2013 we measure the number of injuries and how many games those players miss. 2014 was the same as 2015, but in 2015 those injuries occurred to basically our top players. In 2014 it was players who maybe weren't quite as critical to the success. So anyway, it's really, really complicated, but I don't see the end of that battle between national teams and clubs anytime soon. Yeah.
One more question. All the way in the back. Let me repeat the question. So you're saying, is there a common thread in the businesses you've been involved with, owned, operated, et cetera? Is there a common thread in the decision making? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think I might go back to sort of my sort of more generic statement about for me, a good business, has some pretty core components. A good plan, a good roadmap, good goals, good product, and then great people that are all passionate and heading in the same direction. That doesn't mean that it that everyone agrees with everyone, all the time. I think disagreement is really, really healthy, but in a really, in a functional way. Um, and and then leaders, managers who are willing to get out of the way and let people grow and thrive and dream and take risks. That's something. Occasionally it gets us in trouble in our organization, but we always try to push risk taking within different departments. And someone mentioned the game day experience atmosphere being top notch, second to none, but. And I think probably I'd be accused in our organization of being a little hypercritical, but like I look at it and I see all this opportunity and how it can be so much better. And some of that is in risk taking, some of that is in being self-critical, and a big piece of it rests on me and the other leaders to just continue to push and push the goals and push the envelope of what's possible.
Well, I first want to say thank you for being here. It's great. Second, thanks for the sponsors for allowing us to be here. PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, awesome. Galvanize, of course.
Sponsor of the Sounders as well.
Yeah, they're great guys. Galvanize, of course. Drizzly, Patrick, thanks for helping out. Seed IP, of course. And Pivotal, thanks, Carl. And most of all, thank you guys for being here. And to do that, Adrian brought a little gift. So whoever asked the question, we're going to give 4 Sounder tickets to. So, because how many tickets do we have here?
You're better at math, maybe. I don't.
So,
You might want to start with 2. And that for me, if anyone, after the 2, if anyone is being honest and says they haven't been to a game and are available to go on, when's our game? Saturday at 1. They would, oh boy, wow. Oh, nobody's been to a game. Oh. Buzz can buy his own tickets. So some people who haven't been to games be awesome. I'd love. Oh. You're welcome. Anybody wearing Sounder gear seems suspect. What's that? Yeah, of course.
Great. So, thanks for being here. Great for showing up tonight. We have a game tonight. The little crowd was a little sparse tonight, but again, thank you for being here. We are here next month, last Tuesday of the month. It's Sarah Bird from SEO Moz, right? Yep, she'll be here on the last day of May. So look forward to seeing you there. Go to our Facebook page at Seattle Grind, like our Facebook page, and follow us on Seattle Grind on Twitter. Thanks a lot. Have a great evening. Be safe.